So with that, I created a demo app here. And this is, so because it's a plugin, and this is the interesting thing for me, having released modules in the past where the code is available for everybody to see. You're downloading a Lua file and you're throwing it into your project. You could modify it if you want. This is not. The process of, with a plugin, it's hashed, and it does download a file to your computer, but it's encrypted. You can't see it. The folks at Corona Lab could see it, but it's it's not modifiable by the end user. So I went about making a sample app that would sort of show off what it can do. And so here I've got, well, let me log out, so go to the process of, so it sort of loads up here. You've got the fail whale, which Twitter doesn't use anymore. I suppose it makes sense not to use a mascot that only shows up when your servers are overloaded, but I always thought it was really cute, so so I used it. So you tap here, and what this does is call twitter.login, which attempts to log in the user, and you get this authorize. It says here Corona SDK Twitter plugin. It only says that because I created a Twitter app that has that name. You would need to plug in a couple of strings of data for your plugin, for your app, your Twitter app. And all of this is on my website, jasonschroeder.com. Again, I don't want to spend too much time getting into the real nitty-gritty because it's all documented, and it's up on that site. But that shows you how to create a Twitter app. You do that. You pass in some strings into twitter.init, which is like a lot of plugins. You have to initialize it with some specific data to you. You click Authorize App, and it logs the user in. When that happens, the fail whale rises up. It automatically pulls whoever the logged in user is. It'll pull in their profile image. It says here logged in as Schroeder Apps at the bottom because it's me. So each of these orange buttons represents what I call a convenience function. So there's twitter.request, which is like a raw. What's great about that is it's extremely flexible. You can, if there is a Twitter API, which is available on their website. If you just Google Twitter APIs, you'll see all of their REST APIs here. So you've got, get statuses user timeline, get, statuses retweeters. All of these are accessible using Twitter.request, and there is a specific syntax for that I like to think is simplified. You pass in the name of a endpoint, which is this statuses / user timeline, for example. And then you pass in a method, which is either get or post, pretty much. And then you pass in parameters. And on this Twitter API website, you will see they list all of the available parameters. It's pretty clearly laid out. And then you would pass in a table that says status equals whatever the status is. These are optional ones you can pass in. And I didn't have to go through and code all of these, one by one. I set it up to be flexible so that you punch in the syntax, it's going to go against their servers and return raw JSON data. It's up to you to do with that data what you want. So it's really flexible, but it requires more heavy lifting by you. And that's twitter.request. When you click it here in the demo app, it pretty much just brings up a version of what I just said, sort of explaining how it all works, and then it gives a sample down here at the bottom. It says twitter.request, endpoint equals search tweets, method equals get, parameters equals q equals Schroeder apps, and then you pass in a callback function, and that callback function will handle, it takes a single argument, which is the returned JSON data, then it's up to you to do with it whatever you want to do with it. You have to decode it, turn it into a Lua table, and then it's on you to navigate that. For people who don't want to get that into it, I created what I'm calling convenience functions, which are functions that are sort of simplified. They have a simple API, and they return Lua data or a Corona display object, depending on how it's handled. Saying that they return it is perhaps misstating it on my back because it is an asynchronous call. So it passes the returned data into a callback function. So twitter.tweet, for example, if you click it here, it'll say twitter.tweet posts a status to the logged in user's timeline. Click OK to tweet. I use Schroeder Apps Twitter plugin for Corona SDK to tweet. You click OK, it tweets it, and then just to prove that it actually worked, here in the demo app, it will show you an And this is me. You can see how that happens. I have a callback function that opens up a web view and shows that return data. And then you click here and it goes away. Twitter.search, same thing. You pass in a search term. You can pass in an optional table with a couple of parameters to try and narrow things down. And then it returns a Lua table. And that's what this shows here. This is actually what you're seeing here in the demo app is a couple of months ago, Rob Miracle posted a print R function, which essentially prints out a table. I just modified that to, instead of printing it, it returns each line as a new text object, and it throws that into a scroll view. So you're seeing that on the screen. So you can see it returns a table for each tweet. It has the tweet ID, the text, the screen name of the person who tweeted it, and a timestamp. More data than that gets returned, and that's the case with all of these convenience functions. But the idea is that I'm coming up with, I think, is a common use scenario. You can, if there's not enough in here, if you want more, that's great. That's what Twitter request is for. You can do whatever you want. But these are sort of Twitter follow. You can follow anybody. I set it up so that you follow me. But calling Twitter.follow. Now you'll see here I'm logged in as me. And this gives you an example of if it throws up an error, it'll actually give you that as well. So here it says Twitter plugin error. Your Twitter request was received successfully, but returned the following error. You can't follow yourself. So my hope is that I did a pretty good job of handling most use case scenarios, and that it'll work. But certainly there's a forum post for it that I think in past with plugins I've seen those become sort of the thread where issues get reported. There's already been a couple of changes in the last 4 days made to this based on feedback there. I ended up changing Twitter.login so that it can handle specifically when a user cancels the login. So go check that out. And then there's Twitter get user, which returns data on a specific user. Let's do Alex. Why not? He's not here, but he will be tomorrow night. It returns their follower accounts, their user ID, how many tweets they favorited, whether I am following them or not, their name, the location, their screen name, which may be different from their display name. It's not in this case, but it can be. Whether or not they're verified, like if they're a celebrity, their friends count, their tweets count. I'm just talking and talking and talking, and I'm on a mobile connection. I'm still here, right? You guys are still hearing me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, good.
All by myself.
I just had this horrible thought. I'm sitting here on a mobile connection, and it's gone dead, and nobody hears me. Get followers will return a table of a user's followers. That's a good example of a case where so certain Twitter APIs restrict the number of data that they can return. So, for example, I think it can only return up to 200 followers at a time. If that's the case for these convenience functions, I added the table that gets returned. There's a piece of data on that called whatever the table, whatever you want to call the table. Response.isMore is true if there are more results that it couldn't display at once, and false if there are not. And if there are more and you want to get them, there's a function called getMore. And you can call that function in your callback function, and it will load up the next set of responses. And I did that for any of the same thing for searches. So I like to think that it's pretty robust. Get friends. I never thought of them as using friends. I don't think it's nomenclature that gets tossed around a lot on Twitter, but that's the people that you follow. So you can get a specific user who they follow. And then Twitter get profile image, which is the only one that doesn't really return a Lua table so much. I mean, it does, because display objects are tables, but it returns a image. So if you want to look at Corona Geek, for example, so you would click that, and it returns the profile image. And that's how you get down here in the lower right-hand corner the logged-in user's profile image. So that's sort of how it works. I mean, like I said, there's full documentation on my website, and I don't want to cut into Steven's time more than I already have. But the demo project is there. You can download it and run it. Please check it out. I do want to spend a couple of minutes, if that's okay. Ed has graciously agreed to be our Windows user. So the way that the login works is it has to go to a website, and it returns data from that website in a URL. And on Mac and on device, that's all great. You can handle all of that by using native New Web View. Native New Web View isn't supported in the Windows simulator, so I had to come up with a kind of a hacky workaround to get it to work. And Ed can sort of walk us through that process.